Hey everybody, this is Dr. William Clark here, and before we jump into our show, I wanted to share a resource with you that can help you get your podcasting off the ground. Anchor is the one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing your podcast. Best of all, it is 100% free and really easy to use. And now, Anchor can match you with great sponsors who want to advertise on your podcast. That means you can get paid to podcast right away. In fact, that's what I'm doing right now by reading this ad to you. So if you want to get started with podcasting and you want to make it as simple as possible, go ahead and visit anchor.fm/start. Now, let's jump into our show. Hey everyone, this is Dr. William Clark here for the Dr. William Clark podcast. I am your host, and I'm excited to be with you this morning and glad to join you on your fundraising journey. And we are continuing this thought and idea around how to get beyond your own limitations to fundraise. And I wanted to share something really quickly with you, particularly about fundraising. I have a friend who is launching several businesses, or I don't want to say launch, but this person is his businesses are flourishing. Let me just say that. And he's doing quite well. And I was just communicating with this person. And one of the things that stuck out to me was the fact that he was so focused on making sure that all the projects he's working on is going well. And it made me think back to last year when none of this was going on, and he was in a different place. He was considering some ideas and trying to figure out where he should position himself in his business. And look at him now. Months later, 12 months later, year later, 24 months later, he is in a place where he is doing well and he's excited about what's going on. And while you may think this idea, the story I'm sharing with you is a little bit disconnected to you, in fact, it's not. Because one of the things that was stated when I was just communicating with him was, it is nice to have several checks coming in. It is nice to have the business flowing, multiple customer types and bases coming in, purchasing different products and services that meets their needs. And oftentimes when I think of that, I do think about the times in my career where I've launched several businesses and they were bringing in several checks. It was because of these businesses that I was able to survive and during a very difficult financial time in my life. And I'm continuing to benefit from all that. But the thing that also runs through my mind is the lack of multiple checks, multiple revenue sources coming in for nonprofits. Now, you may argue me down and say, hey, I got multiple funders, I have multiple supporters, we're doing quite well. If all of your supporters, if all of your funders are coming from foundations where you have to submit a grant application to get the revenue or get the check, and you have multiple versions of that, you only have one income source when you group them by type, and that is not healthy. Every business knows, every business owner knows, every entrepreneur knows that you have to have multiple streams of income. And the question you may be asking me is how do I do that? What does that look like for nonprofits? Well, over my experience, from my experience, I tell you that it requires you to not only continue to chase grants and to pursue funding opportunities through foundations, which is something you got to do because that's what you're designed for. It also requires you to look at other opportunities, such as partnerships with other providers, where you are a service provider to them and you are delivering on services as a subcontractor. That's a second stream of income. The third stream of income you can look at are sponsorships. So you may sponsor an organization, or an organization may sponsor you, rather, let me say that, because of the services you provide, because of the value you provide, and because of their interest in your customer base and the work that you do, that they may say, we want to put our name on your work. We want to make sure that your work goes wide and deep, and it goes out to a community that can hear your story and hear your message. And with that being said, we want to give you some dollars to support that effort. That's a sponsorship. That's three streams of income. Here's a fourth one. You may say, we want to partner with a for-profit business where we may provide customers to you for your business who may pay a certain fee or rate for your service or products, and we want a percentage of that. Okay, here's a fifth stream of income. You may consider launching your own business, your own for profit entity, your own enterprise, and you may say, we're going to compete in the open market. We're going to compete with all types of vendors, and we're going to sell our services for market rate prices, not for a nonprofit discount, but market rate prices. We're going to pay our bills, we're going to pay our staff, we're going to pay our rent, and we're going to look at what revenue is left over at the end of the year, the fiscal year. Those are five streams of income that I just listed. And I'm encouraging you to think about fundraising requires a little nudge. In order for you to fundraise, you have to do a little pushing. And I'm not talking about pushing your donors. I'm not talking about pushing people to give you a check or buy a product. In fact, I'm talking about pushing you. Fundraising requires a little push of yourself. You got to push yourself beyond the limitations that you see right now. You got to push yourself beyond the limitations of what you think are normal and what are quote standards, end quote, right? You have to push yourself beyond what you consider the basics in order to position your nonprofit to generate multiple streams of revenue. This is important because the more diverse your revenue sources are, the more opportunities you give yourself to serve your base clients and then some. You want your nonprofit to survive and be around for years to come. You want a legacy to survive and thrive for your nonprofit. You want people, you want families, you want communities to benefit from your nonprofit for years to come. In order to make that happen, you cannot rely upon the local foundation to be your bank and for you to think you can go to them to cash a check whenever you need to pay a bill. That's not how that works. In so many cases, foundations will give you a couple years of funding. They require you to take some time off and then come back and recompete. They want to do that because they don't want to seem like they are the bank of your of your organization, and they want to make sure that they are getting the best out of you, because if you're not challenged to give the best through your grant applications or through a proposal or through an idea, then they're not getting a bang for their buck. Okay. And given that limitation across the board with multiple foundations and grant giving institutions, contracts with government, whether it's state, federal, or local, you're going to have to look at alternative revenue sources, multiple revenue sources. This is why I wrote my book, Sustainable: How to Sustain a Faith-Based and Nonprofit Organization, because I went through and lived through a traumatic experience with my home church where we were devastated by a natural disaster. Our facility was damaged. We had a declining attendance, and it was not getting any younger, and there was no revenue coming in. And for me, as someone who was going through a process, a transition of moving to another state, and I didn't want to leave them where they were, it became a struggle for me to see them in that state. And I worked with them to create a foundation of revenue where they not only were able to sustain their current revenue sources through their donations from individual givers, but they now have a beautiful campus, a beautiful facility, and rental property where they can generate revenue to support any expenses that they have. That is how you become sustainable when you create multiple revenue sources. You got to have more than one. I argue you got to have 3 to 5. And if you can have more than 5, you're well on your way. You got to spread your wings. Here's a sixth revenue source that I didn't mention, but I think is worth mentioning: individual donors, people who are giving individual gifts. Here's a seventh revenue source. What if you have a relationship with would-be donors who are going to leave you some money in their will from their estate? That's a big, big deal. Here, how about eighth revenue source? What if your nonprofit has some unrestricted revenue and invested in the stock market? What about that? What about a ninth revenue source? What if you have some unrestricted revenue sources and you invest it in a local business in your community? A business in your community that not only is local to your facility and your business and place of operation, but also local to the services your clients buy and frequent. What if you invested in that business and you not only got a portion of the revenue from that particular business, but you also were able to make sure some of your clients, some of the young people you serve, get jobs? This is what you got to do. This is what you got to think about. This is what I help people do all day long. And I encourage you. I encourage you to visit me at mysixfigurefunding.com. You can do two things. If you're not sure about what it means to triple your revenue, to build six-figure programs, then take the free webinar. I cover this and more in the free webinar. If you are ready to learn more and take your nonprofit fundraising to the next level and to build up your repertoire, your skills, your toolbox, your toolkit, and build the capacity of your organization, then take the Grant Writing 101 Masterclass masterclass, all you got to do is go to my6figurefunding.com, my6figurefunding.com. We are there to help you get the little push you need to move forward and to build your nonprofit foundation. This is the Dr. William Clark podcast. We'll see you in the next episode.